Think becoming a millionaire is out of reach? You should think again. Last year, every single day, 1,500 people became new millionaires. But it's not just about reaching that $1 million portfolio. The real question of what's important is, what can that do for you in retirement? How much passive income can it generate? Well, stick around, because today I'm going to show you the paths to becoming a millionaire, how much passive income it can generate for you, and the best ways to get there. So is a $1 million portfolio realistic? Absolutely. I'll just cut to the chase. It's totally achievable, and I'll prove it. Let's use SCHD as an example. So here are the numbers. The current yield is about 3.75%. It's grown its dividends about 10% every year, and the price of SCHD has grown about 8.5% every single year. So let's run a few scenarios. One, if you invest $7,000 every single year into SCHD, and that's the max for a Roth IRA, it takes you about 24 years to get there. If you do something in the middle, let's say you start with $10,000 and you invest $14,000 every single year, it takes 19 years to get there. And in the United States, the max contribution for a 401k is $23,500 a year. If you max your 401k every single year and have numbers similar to SCHD, it takes you about 15 years to get there. So it's totally possible. It's the power of compounding and consistent savings that's the secret. If you're curious and want to play with some of your own numbers, I included a dividend growth spreadsheet in the description that you can download and plug in whatever you want. You can see what kind of passive income you could generate, how long it would take you to get to $1 million. It's kind of fun to play with, so make sure you grab that. Before we talk about how much income it generates, we probably need to think about how much income you'll need in retirement. And this is a really hard question. The estimates vary a lot. There was a survey, I'll put the link in the description, and those estimates range anywhere from $24,000 a year for a homeowner with no mortgage that's in good health, up to $41,544 per year for someone with a mortgage and bad health. Now, CNBC did a survey or an estimate, and it was done state by state, and they also included a 20% buffer, just, for extra spending money. And so those numbers vary a lot too. So the most expensive, no surprise, is Hawaii. That requires over $120,000 a year. And in their example, the least expensive, Mississippi, at about $55,000. To give you a few others, let's look. Arizona, about $70,000. California is $90,000 a year. Florida, if you want to retire down there, $68,000 a year is what you'll need. And most of the Midwest is right around $60,000 a year. So the biggest lesson here is to figure out what you think you'll need so that you have a target to shoot for. Now let's talk about where to invest. How can you generate some passive income? Well, the classic example, and the one that feels safe for most retirees, is fixed income. This is things like bonds, money markets, treasuries. And now that interest rates are above zero, you can actually get some kind of attractive yields here. This might be enough to fund your retirement. So a money market account, 3.5% to 4%, and the math's easy. With $1 million, that's $35,000 to $40,000 a year. 10-year treasuries are about 4.5% right now, so that's $45,000 a year. If you move up to corporate bonds, you can get 5 to 5.5%. So $50,000 to $55,000, and if you want to go all the way up to high yield, or what they call junk bonds, that's about 6.5% to 7% right now. So you can get $65,000 to $70,000 a year out of those high yield bonds. And this income is steady. It's a bond. It's pretty well guaranteed. Now, a money market account may fluctuate, but everything else usually is a fixed interest rate loan that you're investing in. And for a lot of retirees, that feels very safe. They like that consistent income. But the problem is inflation. This income doesn't grow. A 10-year treasury, you get paid the same amount every single year. And inflation is going to eat away at your purchasing power. Just for an example, if inflation runs at 3.5%, in 20 years, your purchasing power is cut in half. And I know that seems like a long time when you're thinking about retirement, but if you retire at 65, 20 years, you're 85. That's not an abnormally long life. So I think one obvious answer to this problem is dividend growth investing. So as dividends grow, so does your income. So as long as your dividend growth rate of your portfolio is above inflation, you at least keep your purchasing power. So you get the income, plus you get some inflation protection. And the good news is, if we look over long periods, dividends have consistently grown faster than inflation. This is the S&P versus the CPI measure that the government uses in the US to measure inflation. And you can see the S&P consistently grows its dividends faster than inflation. The other good thing here is that as the dividends go up, the stock prices tend to follow. So you get income with inflation protection, plus your principal gets to grow. This is why I like it so much. So now we can get specific. How much income does $1 million generate? And we'll just use a few common dividend ETFs to illustrate this example. And this assumes that you just have $1 million and you go ahead and start investing in these ETFs, when you're going to retire or close to it. One of the more popular ones is the Dividend Aristocrats. So this is S&P companies that have grown their dividends for at least 25 years in a row. These are companies with solid histories of growth, and you can probably expect them to continue growing that income for you through retirement. So one of the more popular ETFs for this is NOBL, and that yields about 2.1% to start. So that gives you about $21,000. That's towards the low end of those estimates, but the good news is that historically, these companies have grown their dividends about 6.3% a year, so that should outpace inflation. At least your purchasing power won't go away, but we can probably do better. Now, I used SCHD as my example earlier, and that at a 3.75% yield would get you $37,000. But a lot of my European friends like to point out that that ETF isn't available for them. Good news. I found one that's somewhat similar, and that's TDIV. This is a product from Van Eck, and it's got a current yield of about 3.9. The 5-year CAGR on the dividends per share is about 8.4, and the share price has appreciated about 7% over the long term. So not quite as fast growing as SCHD, but you get a higher yield to start, and that will get you $39,000 every single year in retirement. And again, faster growth than inflation, so you keep your purchasing power no matter how long you live. Great news. But we can still probably do better. If you have that $1 million and don't have any sort of passive income coming in now, you're probably going to need more than that. Well, let's talk about a hybrid approach. This is designed to give you some income today and some growth later. That's why this idea is so powerful. So I'm just going to split the portfolio in half, and we're going to put $500,000 into something high yielding. So for this example, I used JEPI, J-E-P-I. There's versions of this also available in Europe, which is one of the reasons I picked it. And it yields around 8%. This varies, but that gets you $40,000 of dividend income right away. And the other half, for this example, I used TDIV for our European friends. And that generates about $20,000 for you in year one. But if you can reinvest those dividends by year 5, TDIV gets you about $36,000 in income, and the portfolio would be worth over $800,000. So this strategy gives you substantial income up front, plus it allows you to grow your income into retirement. And then obviously, as your needs change, you can shift. You can move some more money into TDIV, you can move more money into JEPI, but this gives you some kind of blend of growth and income. But we can still do better if you have more time to retirement. So what happens if you invest in dividend growers right from the start? So for these examples, I'm going to take some of those scenarios I laid out at the beginning, $7,000 a year, maxing out at a 401k, and we'll pick some different ETFs and see what that looks like as you build your way to your $1 million portfolio. So for scenario number 1, we'll combine maxing out a Roth IRA, so $7,000 a year, with SCHD. And that takes about 24 years to become a millionaire. But when you get there, you have $59,000 in passive income right off the bat. That's better than obviously just getting $1 million and starting investing. You get to benefit from the reinvestment and the dividend growth the entire time you're building that $1 million portfolio. Let's take a middle path. Let's start with $10,000 and we'll double our yearly contribution from the Roth. We'll do $14,000 every single year. And for this one, we'll use TDIV. Now, it takes 20 years to become a millionaire and you're still over 50,000. You've got about 54,500 in passive income at this point. But what if we go to the maxing out the 401k example? And what if we use the compounding dividends portfolio? That's our model portfolio for our newsletter with 150,000 readers. And here's the important stats. So our current yield is about 3.3%. The 5-year historical price growth has been about 7.7% for our companies. And in the last 5 years, they've grown their dividends at 14.98% per year. That's massive. So if you invest in that portfolio and max out a 401k, you hit the $1 million mark and you're generating $107,227 in passive income every single year. And you can retire almost anywhere on that. Doesn't quite get you to Hawaii, but if you reinvest for a few years, you'll be there, no problem. So the takeaway? Becoming a millionaire and achieving financial freedom through passive income from dividends is totally possible, especially if you plan a few years ahead of time and give the passive income time to grow. If you liked this video and found it helpful, hit the like button and go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And I'm curious, how much do you think you'll need in retirement? Let me know in the comments. These numbers vary so widely, I'm really curious to hear what other people are shooting for. And if you didn't like this video, make sure I know. Hit that dislike button. Make sure I hear it. Hit it twice. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.